Start talking about our technology, the first question that comes up is how much more expensive is it than normal concrete?
Right.
And it's the wrong question to ask.
Welcome to the Coles Ventures podcast.
It's interesting because my grandpa actually ran and operated a concrete plant back in the day.
Yeah.
In Athol, Idaho. And so I grew up like when I was just like a baby, like going and like playing on the giant, mounds of gravel and concrete and all that. So it's funny that talking with you and some of the stuff that he used to talk about when he was still in business, when he still had it was like a lot of the similar stuff. So, I mean, we can kind of, I know a little bit about you now, but local Spokane guy, how did you kind of find your way into what you're doing now?
It's been circuitous. I mean, I have a weird kind of like path, I guess, in a sense. From Spokane, spent some time in Seattle after college and actually had a sales job. And around that time, a friend of mine was at Washington State University, and he was in like an environmental engineering class, and he became friends with this kid from China. And they were talking about stormwater and green infrastructure and stuff in this class. And one thing led to another where his friend from China was like, my family owns like this refractory brick business, and they make these micro porous pavers that basically let water go through it. And I don't know, Kevin and I would go back and forth, like trading like business ideas and what we could do. Yeah. And I knew that was like a growing concern in cities was stormwater management, and especially for developers, like on the property development front, was being able to, have solutions where you could manage stormwater on site. And so I was like, well, I think, there's a market for something like this here. And so Kevin got the kid to send over samples. We got the samples. We were really excited, and I'm like, we can start a business, like actually marketing and selling this product. And that's kind of how it all started. Like, and that was not a good business because you're importing something from halfway across the world. Quality control with the factory was atrocious. We didn't speak the language, but we were naive and ambitious, and we actually started getting projects, and we were winning bids with this product. And we, soon found out when we started getting shipments of stuff that wasn't the right color or was failing or whatever, it was like, well, we should probably pivot, try to come up with our own technology. So that's kind of how AquiPor started, was with that first importation business, basically.
Interesting. That reminds me, I read a book, I don't know if Phil Knight wrote it, but it's called Shoe Dogs. Yeah. And it's all about his story of kind of like how he got started out. And it's like similar-ish. And that, like, I think it was in
I love that
Japan. Book. Is when he like imported or like had I don't know exactly the whole story. I'm probably misquoting a bit, but I mean similar-ish, where he went over there and he's like, they had these, the new tech and whatever, and then like tried to import it, and that didn't really work. So then had to like kind of go on his own thing. But from the start of it, did you have any interest in let me back up, because like how does the traditional concrete, like how do they think about water dispersion, runoff? I mean, is that something that they think about? Because I think for most people, it rains, there's grates in the street. Most people, it's like not even a thought in their head. But if you're going to make a huge parking lot, or if you're going to make a street, that's probably one of the top things that engineers are trying to figure out, like, where's all this water going to go? It is.
And I think that really comes down to, whether you're a developer or a city, those requirements, for one, they're getting more stringent, but that's a huge issue. It's one thing, and that's what people, I think, when we start talking about our technology, the first question that comes up is how much more expensive is it than normal concrete? Right. And it's the wrong question to ask, because to your point, when you pave a parking lot or say 3 miles of city street or roadway, you have to consider the stormwater infrastructure that goes with that. So storm drains, all the pipes and conveyance under the street that we don't think about. And then obviously all that water goes to wastewater treatment plants. And then the cost per gallon to treat that, there's a real cost. And so, you're right. I think cities, developers, people that are building these projects, that is always like a big consideration, is how are we going to deal with the stormwater? Yeah. So for us, it's kind of like, well, let's just make your paved flat work do two things at once. It can be your flat work, and then it can also be your stormwater system.
So with your product, and I've seen it, I mean, the videos are crazy because you have usually a bottle of water like this and like a slab of some sort, you know, like a foot by foot, and you holding it up and you dump the water on it and you can see it going through, and then it just all comes out the bottom. I mean, like, it's crazy because you're thinking to yourself, like, what happens if you know, everyone's like tossed out some excess water from a water bottle or whatever, like onto the street, and you kind of just, I mean, it doesn't go anywhere. Right. It just like pools up and you're like, oh, like it'll, you know, evaporate or whatever. From the system that you described, it going integrates, you know, into the sewer system to the wastewater plants. I mean, how does yours, because it's just going through, what kind of infrastructure do you guys have to put in so that that water goes somewhere and not just to, you know, whatever's underneath the ground,
right.
I guess, in essence?
Well, the ideal is to get it back into the ground naturally, like to recharge groundwater, get it back into the soils. But every project, it's all going to depend on the soil hydrology. So there's a lot of engineering that goes with, like, if you're going to pour, say, a mile of roadway with our material, like, that needs to be engineered. And if there's a situation where the soil is not very permeable, you're fighting against nature then. Right. And so you might still need some piping to convey that water. So it's totally dependent on the site. But I mean, typically the ideal for us is if we can just manage stormwater right where it falls and recharge groundwater, which, you know, depending on how much water a city gets annually, a lot of that's going to go back to the aquifer. Right. And then we keep the pollution on the surface, you know, out of our waterways. Yeah. It's kind of the idea. Yeah.
And then when you're bidding or pitching, is it mostly municipalities, governmental organizations, or is it some, you know, kind of a mix of that plus private and parking lots and all that?
Right now it's a mix, and we have like 10 horses in the race. Yeah. So at some point soon, we're going to figure out what horse we pick. So we're at the stage right now where we're piloting the technology in an array of different applications to see like what market needs this the most and where is this the most efficient and, you know, has the highest value. And so it has been a lot of municipalities, private developers, and then even like infrastructure partners. There's a group we're talking to about reef balls, believe it or not. These are like hollow concrete balls that they throw into coastal areas to like regrow, you know, reef life and promote aquatic health, basically. Yeah. So interesting little niches like that where we're excited, but a lot of testing still needs to be done on that front.
Sure. For them, when they're thinking about, okay, we're looking at a project and we need a mile of road that needs to be redone, and they're looking at, okay, traditional concrete or asphalt versus your product. I mean, from their perspective, what are some of the like pros and cons that they're thinking of when they're evaluating a proposition?
Well, they'll look at our product and, you know, they see the numbers, like how much water it can take on, how strong it is. And they say, okay, this is high performance, but it's always, this is new, right? It hasn't been around. You don't have like reference installs that have been in the ground for 10 years. And so that's what we're up against right now. But I think in terms of like performance, they're looking at something that is strong. It's as strong as normal concrete, but then you get that stormwater benefit. And so I think that's a huge value proposition right now. But then, you know, with traditional concrete or traditional asphalt, those are products that have been around forever. They stand the test of time. Contractors know how to pour them. They're user friendly. And so, you know, that's another thing where we've been very focused on how do we get our technology into a format that seamlessly integrates into what they're already doing. And so that over the last 12 months has probably been our biggest milestone. It's like, it's just an ingredient, put it into what you're already doing, and, you know, it pours and batches the same way as normal concrete.
Yeah. I mean, again, it gets a little bit into the makeup of it. Obviously, most people, I would assume, are familiar with how to make concrete and asphalt from like the bags. You add water and like boom, just like that. I mean, from your guys' business perspective, is that kind of a similar process? Is that more like proprietary, you know, close to home, like it's your own in the lab, you know, you're making stuff, or like how does it differ from normal concrete?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this actually leads kind of to our business model. So the way we make our product, we actually engineer they're like big blocks, ingots kind of. And that's our proprietary material and process. And then we actually crush it up. So we'll process it as like a very fine powder. And then that powder, we can put that into 2-ton super sacks and send that to a ready mix supplier or a precast manufacturer, or a paver manufacturer. And it goes into their mix as like an ingredient that can replace the fine sand portion.
Okay. Yeah.
Or it can even be blended with their Portland cement. And so super seamless integration. The way we want to set it up is kind of like a hub and spoke model where we still want to control the manufacturing, even if it's like us licensing that piece of it and then just making the fine powder and then regionally getting it to, big producers to make their own products with it.
Interesting. Okay. And then you talked about a little bit about strength. I mean, the makeup of it obviously is just somewhat different because water goes and flows right through it. I mean, how does that compare? Is similar strength? Is it less strength, more brittle? I mean, how does that aspect compare? Like, obviously people drive around all the time and sometimes on concrete, sometimes on asphalt, but everyone's like, oh, there's a pothole, especially. And again, in our region too, for, the freeze thaw effect we just talked about, right? So like kind of how does all that play into what you guys are making?
That's where I get excited. So what we've found is our material in the right proportions with the mix, it can improve the strength and durability. Okay. And there's some reasons for that chemically, which we don't have to geek out and get into all that, but there's some good reasons it's doing that. And so now you can have a mix design where you have too much of our material in the mix, and then that's going to affect strength and durability. Sure. But we've kind of got it dialed into where there's a range. If you want something that's, in fact, we were just talking about airports and airport runways. We have a concrete contractor here in town he's awesome. He got involved early and he's kind of like leading us towards certain opportunities, giving us mix designs to test. Well, long story short, he had a mix design that they're using at the airport. And he said, try this mix, put your stuff in it, see if you can still match the strength and you get any permeability. And so we started testing it, and I mean, we were hitting like 8,000 PSI, which is very strong. And we're getting, good samples. And so we said, you know what, let's do 7 yards, bring in a concrete volumetric mixing truck, and let's pour a demo project with it just to see, if we get the same results. We did that, and it's great. So it performs strength wise. But like I said, totally depends on the mix. If you have too much of our stuff in it, you can have 2,000 PSI concrete that, probably is not going to be suitable for vehicles. Sure. But
yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
And then the freeze thaw thing is still to be determined. Yeah. Like, so far it's been all anecdotal. Like we've got a couple installations in the ground in Spokane that have gone through 2 winters. They look good, no degradation, but it's one of those things where you need to see it over 7, 8, 9 winters to be able to really claim, it's resistant to freeze thaw.
No, that makes sense. When you're looking at, I guess you could just give us a brief overview on kind of the competitive landscape you guys are looking at, because this is not the first porous concrete idea or company. Right. So what separates you guys from some of the other ones that are already kind of available? I mean, what does the mix differential look like, and how do you guys separate from that?
Yeah, it's a great point. So, permeable pavement and so porous asphalt, pervious concrete, they've been around for decades. And so we're not a first mover. And I think part of that, there's an advantage to that. The problem is those materials, although they're still used, they sort of, for lack of a better term, they broke their pick in the market. So contractors hate those materials. We know that. There's a couple material issues with them. For one, they have very large voids. That's how they get a lot of water through them. Okay. But the problem with that is, in the real world, stormwater carries all types of debris and particulates, and things like that, pollutants, that over time it will clog those systems up. And it doesn't just clog the concrete, it will clog the subgrade. And so clogging's an issue, and then those materials are brittle. They're not very strong or durable. What we've done is we've come at it from a totally different sort of chemical approach where they're getting permeability mechanically, just with big holes. You know, they look like Rice Krispie treats.
Sure.
We're processing a material that's as fine as cement, and it actually creates permeability and porosity at the molecular level of the cement paste. And so you're getting like, it's hard to even comprehend, but the amount of porosity in the surface area in our material is so vast that it's like you're making literally the concrete paste permeable.
Yeah.
And so we have videos that show, you know, these huge flow rates, but we also have mixed designs where the water goes on and it'll kind of pool up and then suddenly it just goes. And that's because the pores are so small. There's capillary action. So the advantage is, though, that material, because the pores are so small, we do get some filtration of pollutants on the surface. And so you're getting water through it, and then pollutants are staying on the surface that then can be vacuumed off. And then once you vacuum them off, you go back to almost full permeability. So it's like an easier product, we think, to maintain in the field. But yeah, it's just totally different chemistry, I guess, than what's been out there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I haven't known anyone to use this, or like contractors, like you said, I probably don't like it because X, Y, Z, whatever. I guess like when that must have been difficult when you guys were first starting, and probably still is, to say, hey, I know that there were some, you know, subpar products out there. You probably have heard this ish before, like ours is better. I mean, what has that sales process been like to kind of convince people that, okay, this is a similar idea, but the way that we're going about it is better?
Yeah, another great question. I think it all comes down, especially when we're talking to specifiers and engineers. We can market this till we're blue in the face, but what matters are the numbers, right?
Yeah.
Is like the hard data. And so that's something that we've worked really hard on, is getting third-party data and standards that show, okay, here's our concrete, here's how strong it is. It filters out this amount of pollutants. You know, go through a laundry list of like ASTM standard codes and regulations that we've gone and had it tested for. And now with that information, I think engineers are looking at it very seriously and saying, okay, this is something now where we can design around this. Whereas us just coming in and saying we have a better product than pervious concrete or whatever, they don't care. They want to see like the numbers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we've, I think, started getting into much deeper conversations with municipalities.
That makes sense. What do you think needs to change in the industry with the infrastructure for everything to kind of have yours be the gold standard, like the first option, I guess? I mean, or I guess that's another question for you: is there certain situations in which traditional concrete or asphalt would be better than porous concrete?
Yeah, I think there definitely are. And again, it gets back to those situations, like depending on the soil type. Yeah. And, you know, there's some areas in like Florida where you don't want anything permeable because you could have sinkholes. Yeah. You know, they have like these karst formations. And I don't know if you've ever seen that like on the internet where
it'll just drop off.
Yeah. So there's certain situations where our stuff or pervious concrete you don't want to design with. But to get back, I guess, to your question about what's it going to take, I really think it's like reference projects. So commercial pilot projects with named agencies. So like right now we're in pretty deep conversations in the city of LA, Los Angeles Unified School District, a large corporation down there. I think those pilots with like a logo next to it that we can test and monitor and then use that as a reference for, I think about Southern California. If you get a pilot in LA, that's a reference for Vegas and then Phoenix and the Bay Area. Same thing here in Spokane, you know, Seattle, Spokane, Portland. So that's kind of how we're going about it, is can we get these pilots in the ground, tested and monitored, build case studies around them, and then, you know, you just kind of have to prove it, obviously, in the field.
No, definitely. Is this your first company that you've grown working on?
Second company.
Okay.
The first was that importation,
Okay.
marketing, and selling that.
So you've
product.
had some experience in this before. I mean, what's been the biggest hurdle from the business entrepreneurial side of things?
Biggest hurdle, capital raising is always hard. I think it's even harder maybe in hard tech, in a way. So that's always a challenge, but that's nothing new. I mean, every entrepreneur kind of goes through that.
Sure.
I would say, just understanding the timelines, right? Like when I started out, because we've been doing this, we've been at this for a while. When we started, we were like, well, we're going to launch, scale, and we're going to exit in, 3 years or whatever. And it's like, I had no idea the amount of time and effort it was going to take even to get to this point. And so I think that's been a challenge that now I'm immune to, and I actually embrace it, is, every milestone you get to a new juncture where your timeline's going to change. The R&D timeline seemed like it took forever. Now it's like we're on the path of getting specified and getting on approved lists. That's going to take some time. And so that's been challenging, but starting to understand that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially for, hard tech stuff like your guys', there's so much more red tape around everything to get certified or to get approved by this or that or the other thing. And I mean, a lot different than, building a software company where it's like, okay, business is looking at you and saying, okay, is this going to help me save money or save time or whatever? Okay, great. We'll try it out. And if it doesn't work, then we'll just cancel the subscription or whatever.
Right.
Move on. Right. But with yours, it's like, okay, once it's there, I mean, you could take it up, but it's going to take a lot more work and money to get that up. So,
well, and that's the thing too. I think, investors, software investors, they understand, product market fit and then customer churn, customer acquisition costs. And so, looking at something like this where the development cycle could be 5-10 years, that's scary, right? Yeah. It's like, investors have capital to return to LPs, and so they're like, we're not waiting 10 years for this. But the paradox of that is actually going through it. What I've realized is you can build real structural moats, like just with the time that it takes. So the processes that are proprietary to us now, the manufacturing know-how, even the long qualification cycles, it's like on the other side of that, you suddenly have this moat where it's like the upside then could be pretty massive. And I think that's one of the things that gets us excited now is like, now we have all this and it's just one step at a time now. Definitely. Obviously getting in the field and getting those first contracts.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I think a lot of investors, especially software investors, are at a loss for that right now, right? Because you talk to somebody and say, look, I made this thing, and even if they did make it, and this, we have a proprietary like data set or whatever, right. And then you talk to somebody the next day that's like working on something like basically the same thing, with just with a slight tweak, and you're like, okay, well, I mean, between these two, like I have no idea, but someone like you that comes out and saying, hey, we put in years of getting this approved. This is a proprietary mix of this, that, and the other thing. I mean, there's so many steps that just takes time. And so I feel like from that perspective, people I feel like are almost getting, fatigued with all the AI companies and all the software companies and all that. So almost refreshing to talk to companies that are working on more hard tech, like, tangible things like, I'm sure going to meetings, you're like, here's what we make. And like, there you go. Yeah, you can test it right now. Like it works.
It's boring. It's concrete, but here's a magic trick. Yeah,
exactly. But, and I mean, so you're building in Spokane. From Spokane. Why do you guys stay here? I mean, you've got contracts and contacts in LA. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more opportunity if you guys were somewhere else. Like what's the draw to still being here?
We love Spokane. We're obviously born and raised. Our families are here, but I think Spokane offers some other things that really fly under the radar. There's less noise. So, Sand Hill Road. The big thing now in hard tech is like El Segundo, California.
That's what someone was just telling me about that.
You should research some of the companies there, and they're doing cool stuff, but it's like it's almost cultish in a way, but there's some cool stuff going on down there. But I bring that up because it's like, there's a lot of hype and there's noise. In Spokane, I think that there's, obviously cost of living. the startup ecosystem here is growing. It's actually burgeoning. It feels like, I think there's a lot of talent here. And even with what we're doing, it's like you have big concrete contractors, you have big general contractors. These are people that are involved in our business where I feel like we're getting, expertise and know-how from people that they're big regional players. And, we don't have to go and I don't even know what rent is in El Segundo or Silicon Valley. It's like we can grow our families here, raise our families, and I think we have everything we need right here in terms of talent, natural resources. In fact, I think our first, we want to set up this pilot hub and spoke manufacturing model. The pilot's going to be right here in Spokane. And I actually think what we want to do is grow that into being the regional hub for the whole Northwest. And it's like, why not?
Yeah.
So
I like that. I think you're not the first person to say that, especially about the noise, I guess, because you can get that a lot. I mean, if you're in Seattle or if you're in the Bay Area and LA, some of these larger metros where it almost becomes distracting to your guys' business and your proposition on what you're offering people when there's so much going on. And from the day-to-day operations of, there's this event or there's this thing or this dinner, or you got to go talk to this person, but then there's 100 people telling you 100 different things, and to kind of block all that out and just focus on what you guys are doing. I mean, it's probably top tier spot to do that in.
I think it's underrated. I think it's a huge deal. And I know for me, it's like I try to take advice from a few select people because I'm prone to listen to everything,
right.
And try to take bits and pieces. But I've also learned that it's like you have to, count on a few people that you really trust. And I think I'd be gobbled up in those markets.
There's a lot going on, yeah. And I've heard that from a couple people that will move down there to start companies or to work for a startup or whatever, and then end up kind of moving not away, but adjacent. I can't get anything done. There's too much going on, a lot of stuff. But from a entrepreneur's perspective, what is one, the top thing, I guess, that Spokane could do to kind of bolster up the entrepreneurial startup ecosystem?
I don't know. I think there's stuff happening. It's starting to happen here. I mean, honestly, and this is out of everyone's control or not, maybe, but we need one massive exit.
Yeah.
We need a major exit. And, because what spurs from that, what can spur from that.
Right.
But, I think with what we have today, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if we were to look back or even look into the future, I'd be like, there's no way, with what you guys are doing, Ignite, the Angel Alliance, Launchpad, there's all kinds of stuff happening, which, is healthy, that grows the ecosystem. We need a couple big exits.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet.
For sure.
Yeah.
When you look at kind of what you want to do and what you want to accomplish for AquiPor and for yourself in, 3 to 5 years, what does that kind of look like?
I think, the moonshot is, and maybe it's not even the moonshot, is to be, and maybe this is a 5 to 7 year thing, but be on the approved list of every major municipality throughout the nation, where at least we're an approved product and specifiers are picking AquiPor, not just because of the green mandate or things that are happening, but because it's a higher performing stormwater product. And I think that's doable. It's going to take a lot of work, but to get to that point to where it doesn't matter if it's a streetscape in Baltimore or a parking lot in Phoenix, they're like, you know what, we want concrete with AquiPor inside. It's approved. And then, hopefully we're at some point where we have economies of scale to where cost-wise we're in the ballpark and everyone wants it. That would be the mission, the ideal.
I love it. Okay. As we kind of wrap up here, I have a couple rapid fire questions for you, a couple quick hitters. What's the biggest misconception that people have about infrastructure startups?
Biggest misconception, I think that you have to go fast starting out. I think that, in startups, obviously going fast in startups, are one and the same, right? But I think what can happen in infrastructure or hard tech startups is if you try to move too quickly and you go to market, you might be solving a problem that doesn't exist. And so it's like you have to figure out what your market is, what the problem you're solving is, and that could take time. I mean, I'm speaking from our perspective. We started the company to go and make a new type of paver. And had we just and we had a good prototype we probably could have taken to market. Had we gone that route on its own, this would look totally different.
Yeah. Totally different.
So yeah, that'd be maybe the biggest misconception.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think is the most important trait in a founder?
Grit and then intellectual honesty. You have to be honest with yourself, but also grit. You just have to be able to weather the storm and embrace the journey. It's going to suck. A lot of it sucks, but a lot of it's just discovery. And so I think the grittier you are, you can kind of handle, I think, anything that happens. Failures, get knocked down. I think that's important.
Yeah. We just kind of covered this, so it might be kind of a echo chamber from what we just talked about. But what is the most underrated advantage in building a company outside of the major tech hubs?
Yep, less noise, cost of living, obviously. I think that there are also people that are hungry. If you're working on something cool, you're going to have talent around you. I'm just speaking about Spokane, where there's talented people, and they'd be hungry to work with you and on something cool. And I think that's something we have access to here. And then lakes and mountains and Four Seasons and
all that good jazz.
Yeah.
Well, that's so true too, right? I mean, people are always worried about, where do I get the talent? I need the best of the best of the best. And I feel like people often forget, if you're building something worthy of the best of the best of the best, they're going to find you. They're going to come from wherever you are.
And this is, I think we're seeing some of that, right?
For sure.
This is a little hidden gem. It's not so hidden anymore, but this is not a hard place to recruit talent to, I don't think.
Yeah,
but,
definitely. Yeah. Last one here. What keeps you going on the hardest days?
I just think the ultimate overall mission of the company, and also the people working with me, they're very loyal. I'm loyal to them. They mean everything to me. So we're kind of in it together. And then my kids, I've got 3 daughters that, they watch. They don't understand really. So what is dad? He makes bricks. It's they don't get it, but they watch and they see. And I think I take that seriously. It's you have to be a role model and an influence about how you're managing things. And so obviously in the end, I'm doing this for a lot of reasons, but they might be the biggest.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I learned a lot about concrete and about your company. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Great questions.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right.